Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I got to tell you right out of the gate here, this is one of those episodes where I just kept going down multiple rabbit holes, connecting a number of different dots, and then I thought to myself, I got to start recording or else I'll never get to it. So let me dive in here very quickly. I've got a few geopolitical things per usual that I want to mention right off the top here. I want to spend a decent amount of time bringing up numerous examples in the education portion here of this episode as to how MK Ultra is directly connected to what goes on in American education. This, of course, is not a new thing. I'm sure you're well aware of it, but there are, of course, endless news examples that prove that this entire torture program doesn't have to be basically a formality. It doesn't have to be something that exists, in the thought, for example, of a child being tied down to a chair and being cattle prodded while they watch Fantasia. And that's, by the way, a real thing. It doesn't have to be that kind of brainwashing or that kind of torture. It can be far more subtle, and unfortunately, it can become far more commonplace and almost the standard, which is exactly what's happened in American education. So there is no doubt, again, that MK Ultra is in full swing when it comes to what goes on in American education, again, for the purposes of brainwashing, torturing, disassociating individuals from actual reality, causing them, of course, to not think properly, not act properly, not respond properly, and then, of course, demoralize them at the exact same time. And, as the MK Ultra program also did, is it causes individuals to either kill themselves or it causes individuals to kill one another. And again, this is the American education program. And people don't know this. I mean, you might, again, listening to this show and knowing what you probably know about MK Ultra, but there are many people who don't. And this, again, is not new. This is a very old program. It's been declassified. It was certainly around 2015, 2016 when it started to become mainstream. Same thing with Operation Mockingbird. Same kind of stuff when you have the media also working alongside the CIA and with the CIA and the MK Ultra torture program in order to control people and control the way that they think and the way that they feel about particular subjects. It's still in play. And it's very, very serious. Again, Ethan Crumbley's father is on trial right now, and he's on trial, and he doesn't stand a snowball's chance in hell at getting a fair trial. He'll be sent to jail. He'll get the same sentence as his wife, and that'll be it. But again, the entire family was the victim of the mask-wearing COVID lie and 1,000 other things, as was the school. But again, look who government is going after. Government's not going after the government institution that bought the government-manufactured lie. They're going after the family. They're going after the home. They're going after the parents. And yes, of course, Ethan is guilty of what he was guilty of, but at the exact same time, he was the victim as well. There's no doubt about it. And everybody in that environment is still the victim. So I want to bring that up a little bit later. And even more specifically as I get into some of those declassified documents, which, again, anybody can look up on the internet with a basic search. And then I want to get into, again, what might potentially happen in the state of Florida regarding the jabs. And this is going to be interesting. Again, Karen Kingston was talking about this most recently on her Substack and then on the Stu Peters show. Time will tell whether or not Florida ends up pulling these shots because they have no benefit. I think the revelation of the RSV shot, which, as we know, is probably the exact same as the COVID shot, causing essentially the same symptoms as the COVID shot, that being under investigation allegedly is of course beyond suspicious. But who knows? Maybe that is sort of a backdoor way of getting to the COVID shot in order to have the COVID shot pulled. But again, you got to take into account the amount of propaganda, the amount of, again, Operation Mockingbird and MK Ultra that's been associated with the COVID shots. Again, the constant commercials, the constant messaging to all ages of individuals, regardless, again, of what a person is watching. It can be a YouTube ad where a Pfizer commercial will pop up on how everybody has to get multiple shots. A family could be sitting down watching a sporting event, and the exact same kind of commercial will show up too. So this, again, this is the problem, but it'll just be interesting to see if that actually comes to fruition or not. But I'll get to that a little bit later also. Okay, here we go. First of all, quick follow-up from the last episode. Recall the email that I received specifically from the individual asking about the COVID tests. This individual emailed back yet again, and they actually ended up thanking me for leading them to BitChute and Rumble. And they said that they had no idea what that was, and I said, no problem. Again, when a person gets on BitChute and Rumble, YouTube just does not have the same flavor anymore. And again, the only reason that I go over to YouTube is, again, for either school board related issues or to basically see what the mainstream brainwashed media is actually reporting. And then it sort of becomes this qualitative reasoning and analysis comparison that I can use and say, okay, here's reality, but here's what YouTube is actually talking about, and the two don't match. So that's really the only reason I use YouTube. But either way, during that email that I got back, here's what they said. They said, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not reading it right in front of me yet, but they basically said that they decided to go out and buy the Binax Now tests. They took 3 of the tests themselves, and they are apparently unjabbed, and they tested negative. And then they poured a beer over the 4th test, and it tested positive. And that was a revelation for them, which is great. And they openly said again, it's fraudulent. This is incredible. And then they asked again for more shows and more things to watch and what they can pay attention to. And I led them in a number of different directions. And I basically essentially again just said, go with your gut. Just start watching, start listening, start connecting the dots. It's not that everything that everybody says is 100% accurate. I'm sure I'm wrong from time to time. I certainly have been on certain issues. I do my best to correct them, of course, when I find out that I'm wrong. But even so, there's just a lot of listening that has to take place, and people have to start shedding the things that they were doing in their spare time, and then replace what they were doing in their spare time with, again, learning. Because as Seneca said, of course, leisure without study is death. It's a tomb for the mind. And it's true. Again, we just have to get to a separate place where we can start to see things a little bit differently, but we can't do that if we don't shed our skin and continue to evolve and grow, hopefully in a better direction. But even so, again, that self-experiment, which can be dangerous. Again, I don't recommend people take any COVID test of any kind whatsoever. I've brought up all the reasons as to why, and numerous individuals have contributed to the show with horrific stories of people who have taken those tests and they've ended up permanently damaged. Again, the swab test that goes right to the back of the brain, or the front of the brain, I should say, through the back of the nose. This is remarkably dangerous. Again, the woman that I brought up in the past who had that done, and she was unjabbed, but had that done in order to enter the hospital to visit a family member, I believe their parent, who was remarkably ill from the shots, and again, had their face cut open because the bleeding wouldn't stop. And now, of course, they're permanently damaged. In fact, quick little follow-up to that story, you may have heard, I think it was last week or just the week before, but I think it was last week, where in, I want to say Concord, Michigan, there was an SUV that plowed right into a Walmart. Do you remember that story or coming across that? Either way, you can look that up. That happened. Ironically enough, small world, the woman who plowed into the Walmart in her SUV was at the very least boosted. I have this on firsthand knowledge. That woman was boosted and is the co-worker of the woman who had the nasal swab test, who had her face cut open, in order to stop the bleeding, and has, of course, suffered from medical issues since and whatever else. But they're co-workers, those two individuals. Again, very small world, no doubt about it. Okay, let me mention this then, too. I have a bit of a background on this, I guess, a little background story. I think I mentioned it a while back on the show, but it was a number of months ago. when Elon Musk, who I'm not a fan of, and I don't like X and I don't like Twitter or whatever you want to call it, not a fan of the platform at all, because it's not a free speech platform, uh, among endless other reasons. But either way, the platform itself reached a particular point where you couldn't access videos if you didn't have an account on X. So a number of months ago, and I want to say it was almost like 5 or 6 months ago, whenever it was, again, you had to have an account in order to access those videos. So I basically just signed up for a very generic account. I didn't fill out all the personal information, at least the stuff that you didn't have to. I uploaded some generic picture and then, again, just some random account just so that I could access things. It wasn't associated with me or my name. It wasn't even associated with the podcast show, American Education FM. It wasn't any of that. As it turns out, I tried to get on it the other day, and by the way, I never posted over there. I think I had maybe a dozen posts in total, and I would occasionally make a comment to someone in a comments section just because what they had said was completely inaccurate, but not often. But either way, I tried to open up the account the other day to view a video, and I couldn't. And it said, "Sorry, your account's been canceled for violent speech," quote unquote. Now, I don't know what that means because that's not a real thing. But if I was telling somebody to shut up or, whatever it may have been, again, the account got nuked. So what I decided to do finally was I just decided to create an American Education FM account over there on X. So it does exist. Now, don't judge me as best you can here, okay? But the only reason that I've done that again is so that I can access videos that are over there, some of which I, of course, put on the war videos. Many of which I put in the war videos, I should say. And some of them, of course, I'll upload on Gab and 1,000 other things. But the point is that I just decided to have an account over there again for that reason, first and foremost. And then second, I've received a few comments from people who have asked if I'm on X, and I say no. And then they say, well, we are, and if you upload your show over on X, then we can move it around and maybe get some more listeners to your show and whatever else. So I took that into consideration too, and I thought, all right, no problem. If we can pull a few people from X over to a show like this and get them to understand that, X isn't the best place, but, there's other places to go and other ways of communicating, then I guess I'm all for that. So the only thing I'm going to post over on the American Education FM site over on X, which I believe is American Ed FM. So it's at American Ed FM. The only thing I'm going to post over there again is the show. That's it. It might be a Rumble link. It might be a BitChute link. It might even be the occasional war video, but that's about it. I'm not going to make comments on it. I'm not going to do any of that. The whole idea, again, is to just maybe get a few people over on X to actually listen to the show, and then find the show if they can. So, just wanted to make mention of that. Again, if you see the little X logo on my website and you say, "Well, Sean has an X account and he hates that," well, it's true. I do hate it, but I have it, again, just for the reasons that I just mentioned. So I'm not selling out or anything. I'm certainly not giving them any money, at least not to my knowledge. But again, it's just in an effort to basically throw a lifeline to somebody who's over there and may not know that the show exists, or at the very least, again, it gives people the ability to share the show on their X accounts or move it around so that their audiences can see it, whatever it may be. It's basically the same thing as Truth Social. I mean, I'm on Truth, but I don't post over there other than just posting my show, my Substack articles, and the war videos. And that's about it. I don't make comments on Truth. I don't follow a ton of people over there on Truth. I'm not a fan of their interface. I don't think it's a very good platform, but that's just my take. Anyway, just wanted to make mention of that. Okay, let me get into this here now. Voter fraud. There was plenty of it the other day, certainly in Vermont, and certainly with the Trump and Nikki Haley primary vote there, and same thing in California with the primary vote, I should say, between Adam Schiff and Steve Garvey, who are running for California senator. Let me read this post very quickly from greatawakening.win. And this right here again is the very thing that took place the last time, certainly in 2020, when we were watching on television votes actually disappear. Now, as you can imagine, because again, the whole Mike Lindell voter fraud symposiums that certainly occurred over the course of years after 2020 all revealed this. All these company names and all of this nefarious action and all these algorithms and programs and whatever. It was all revealed in all of this, and it's rather common sense, that when votes come in, the numbers are supposed to increase steadily. At no point are they supposed to decrease. So there's no fluctuation that's ever supposed to occur. There's no back and forth. And when there is a back and forth, it's one of two things. It's either a manual human being manually deleting votes on the other end of a computer, or it's a human being who's created the computer algorithm to basically figure out how to change votes as votes are coming in particular if those votes are coming in for someone that the computer or the person running the computer doesn't want to win. That's why you see the fluctuation back and forth. So let me give you an example just very quickly. In Vermont, as the votes were coming in, and it was something like 89% of the votes had come in, the votes for all of the candidates, including Chris Christie, who people still actually voted for. I mean, don't get me started on why that's even a thing, but people did. What ended up happening is even though that the votes were at a 89% total, with 89% of them actually reporting, the numbers were less for all the candidates at that point than they were when the votes were in at 72%. Now again, it's not supposed to be that way. Why would there be less votes for everybody with more of a percentage reporting? So that pretty much defines that right there. But here's the post regarding what went on in California. It said, quote, "I'm literally seeing live cheating with California Senate primary." It said, "Okay, I just checked moments ago. Steve Garvey was ahead of Adam Schiff in the counting, which shocked me. He was at like 1.8 million compared to Schiff's 1.1 million. Then, a minute ago, I just watched Garvey suddenly lose almost 1 million of his votes, like nothing in a flash, where Schiff suddenly gained a few thousand more votes in return while losing absolutely nothing. They said this shit is literally corrupt beyond a shadow of a doubt. I believe the white hats will be doing something to counter this fraud. If I saw Steve Garvey ahead by almost 1 million over Schiff, then lose his massive gains unrealistically. They said there's hope that this bullshit can be countered because surely if this happens in the November election, it will definitely be much larger than it is now. Here's the evidence. Thankfully, a family member took a picture of the evidence before and after the numbers changed. So there's two separate pictures here. And here's what it shows. In the first one, where there's 41% of the votes that are tallied in, Adam Schiff is in the lead with 1,175,341, and Steve Garvey is in second with 970,679. Now, the next one, it shows 53% of the votes in, and Adam Schiff has actually lost votes, believe it or not. It shows him losing approximately 1,000 votes. Again, not a fan of Adam Schiff, but it's still voter fraud. It's still an algorithm shift that's showing people numbers on a screen that are not accurate because, again, you don't lose votes. So now with 53% of the votes in, it shows Steve Garvey at 1,897 votes, give or take, and then it shows Adam Schiff with 1,174. and change. While before, with less of the votes in, he had more than 1,000 than he already has now. So again, this happened again in Vermont. It happened with a presidential primary vote in Vermont also. And this is basically what's referred to as the SYTIL program, SYTIL, if I'm not mistaken. And again, this particular computer program is the one that's basically trying to decide what to show the public based on how people are actually voting, instead of just one-day voting on paper ballots with an accurate count. You voted for this, this is how it is. Because again, and just to sort of summarize this whole thing, at no point should votes be fluctuating at all. It doesn't matter who it is. No one should be losing votes. So again, what are we really watching? Are we watching estimates come in? Is that what we're being gaslit to believe? That the numbers on the screen are just estimates, and that's why you see them fluctuate, because they're just estimates? All that's really doing is just proving that a computer system is showing us something that they interpret to be real, when in fact it isn't. So again, has this been happening in almost every primary vote? Potentially. Certainly in left-wing states. I think that goes without saying. And certainly in the left-wing states where these kinds of companies and these kinds of corporations and algorithmic programs have more of a foothold than maybe, say, another state. But again, we got to keep an eye on this, I think, throughout the entire primary season here, because this is going to continue to happen. Of course, you had Super Tuesday this past Tuesday. The next one is Ohio, I believe, and certainly a few other states. It's going to happen again, is the whole point. And it's certainly going to happen on election night. I think it's just going to be interesting, too, as to whether or not a massive voter turnout, and let's face it, we had one in 2020. I mean, that happened in 2020 no matter what. But even then, we were all gaslit because, again, the media was showing people numbers and saying, oh, look, Arizona just randomly won. And they're never a state that normally wins. And the polls weren't even closed then. So again, that gaslighting should prove to everybody that not only is it a psychological operation and psychological torture that is actually real, but it's remarkably effective. Because it worked. Look at how many people actually think that Joe Biden is the actual legal president. And that, Kamala Harris is the vice president. I mean, people believe this. They believe that Joe Biden got more votes than anybody else in the history of ever. That's absurd. And the fluctuating numbers again on the television screen and 1,000 other things. Of course, they weren't paying attention to that, nor would they care. Nor, of course, would they ever sit down and listen to an explanation as to why that was the case. Again, certainly in the county where I live, the Dominion voting guy didn't want to listen to any of it. In fact, he was openly stating, don't listen to that pillow guy on your TV, that Mike Lindell pillow guy, because you shouldn't believe everything that you read, and you shouldn't believe everything you see, and, he's just trying to brainwash people. And this was a so-called Republican working for Dominion, trying to basically calm all of the, the baby boomer generation and all the MAGA people, and again, all of the individuals who voted for Trump, that the election was stolen, and he was clearly stating that it wasn't. Well, this was the guy working for Dominion. I mean, what is he going to say? He's not openly going to admit that Dominion voting machines are fraudulent, or that votes were stolen in one direction or another. That's not going to happen. So again, it's going to be interesting, again, to see what actually happens here upcoming. But if the turnout is huge like it has been in the past, like it was in 2016 and it was in 2020, and even Donald Trump himself has said, you got to get out there and vote. You've got to vote in such large numbers that it overrides the fraud. I mean, he's openly saying that because he knows that it's real. The question is, how many people in America can possibly vote legally to override a computer system or even a corrupt media that would just take it if they just wanted to take it again? I truly do think the closer we get to Election Day, more and more people are going to get pinched. More and more people are going to be pressured to go in one direction or another. And this really, I think, is sort of the covert war that's taking place. I think it's always taken place, but I think it's certainly going to take place throughout this year, and certainly numerous days, of course, leading up to actual election day, because that entire day is going to be bonkers. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's going to be nuts. It'll be Maricopa County on steroids from 2022. Just the old whoops-a-daisy, the vote tabulator doesn't seem to be working properly, and this is the only one we have, and, well, again, just put your ballot in this waste bin, and we promise we'll count it later. The camera footage in the news that's going to come out on voting day is going to be crazy. I'm looking forward to it because I want to see who intervenes. I just want to see who finally intervenes and what actually happens. We can't keep having people standing in line yelling at poll workers, just assuming that yelling at them is going to get anything done. I mean, again, can we actually trust law enforcement in any of this? I don't think we can. I mean, hell, we can't trust law enforcement by telling them that there's a biological weapon masquerading as a preventative medicine in everyone's county, let alone voting on voting day. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's going to be jacked up. That I am certain of, no doubt about it. Okay. This next story kind of leads into my MK Ultra talk on the subject of education. And this is, again, part of it. So let me just kind of get into it here very quickly, and then I'll sort of ease our way into the MK Ultra discussion. The Gateway Pundit had a story here again. Grady Judd, the sheriff of Polk County, Florida, lightning capital of the world, by the way. It is titled, Sheriff Grady Judd Reveals How U.S. Federal Government Provides Unlimited Plane Tickets to Illegals for Free to Any Destination in the U.S. and Traffics Women in Sex Trade this way also. Now, is this new? Of course not. We know this. I've brought it up numerous times on the show, wrote a Substack about it in October of 2022. Yeah, this is not a new thing. Again, Greg Abbott's been involved in this directly and publicly, so has Ron DeSantis, and so has any other governor that is shipping illegal aliens from point A to point B. In this most recent bust that Grady Judd and his crew made in Polk County, some of these individuals getting wrapped up in this, as you would expect, were also school teachers, which always seems to be the case when it comes to child trafficking. This, too, again, in my opinion, is part of not only the gaslighting, but the MK Ultra torture program, in order to have people actually rationalize their involvement in a business that does have endless employees within, if not state departments of education directly, trafficking human beings and children. Now, we know, again, all of the grooming that's taking place, and this, that, and the other, and I'll get into that again a little more specifically here, but I just wanted to bring that up from Polk County, Florida, because, again, this is part of it. This is sort of being normalized. Again, I couldn't believe it the first time that I heard Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis saying, well, we're sending these illegals. When we get these illegals, we're going to put them on a plane and put them on a bus, and we're going to send them to left-wing sanctuary states and see how you like it. The only thing I was thinking of was that they're trafficking humans. They should be sending them backwards. They should send them back to where they came from, not further into the United States. It's ridiculous. But again, they were doing it for clicks, and they were doing it for likes, and they were doing it for attention getting, and we're keeping the people in our, in our town, in our city, in our state safe, so they say, but we're going to send them somewhere else where ultimately some of those people that they are trafficking themselves are going to end up killing someone who is a legal citizen here. And that's already happened. So, I mean, again, if it were us, okay, if it was you and me, and we were the ones doing this, we would be in jail. If I was the one moving an illegal from Mexico to Texas, and then from Texas to Athens, Georgia, on the campus of the University of Georgia. And then that individual that I moved from point A to point B to point C ends up killing a girl who attends that college as a nursing student, which we know that story recently and what happened there. We would be charged with an endless list of crimes that all led up to, again, that individual actually killing somebody. Now, we would be detained, and some detective would say, well, did you know that this person was going to kill somebody? And we'd say, well, no, we didn't know they were going to kill somebody. And they'd say, yeah, but they're an illegal. And we'd go, well, okay. And then they would say, but you moved them from point A to point B to point C, and you facilitated all of that publicly. We know that you were involved because you openly talked about doing it and then put up the money in order to do it. And then what? I mean, it would be undeniable. We'd have to go, well, yeah, we did. We certainly did. And then we wouldn't be undetained. I mean, they would arrest us and then charge us with crimes. But remember, if you're a governor and you do this, it's not a big deal. It's an attention-getting, point-making, newsworthy kind of thing. As if to say, ha, we're on the right, we're doing this to the left, what's the big problem? No. This is getting innocent Americans killed, and that blood is on everyone's hands who's participated in this. Doesn't matter if it's Greg Abbott, Ron DeSantis, another governor, other politicians, these Christian and Jewish organizations that are flying these people in. It's on all of their hands. They're all responsible for this. And they're all getting a free pass. That's the disgusting part about this. But again, these individuals are also making their way into American K-12 schools. And this is the point that I'm trying to make here in this particular episode, is the normalization of that. And sort of the woe is me and woe is them, and we have to help them because it's the law. And even if they are illegals, we still have to send them to school, and we don't think anything bad's going to happen because they're the victim, because they're living in a foreign country now and it's not their home, and they were victimized at home and now they're here and we have to help them. All of that brainwashing and getting people to believe that and then accept it, that's MK Ultra. No doubt about it. And they're using, again, Operation Mockingbird with the media and the media stories that, tug at people's heartstrings. Consuela came over here from Venezuela and she was seeking a better life, and she brought 2 men with her, and all 3 of them now are arrested because they're a part of a gang and they were trafficking people and dealing drugs and so on and so on. Right next to a local school building. But, don't worry, they had good intentions initially when they came here. This, again, is just it's the constant brainwashing that people are being subjected to, and then they, of course, keep going back to education environments believing that everything that takes place in and around those environments is normal and or okay. And it certainly is not. So here's what I've done. I've put 2 more documents on my website, AmericanEducationFM.com, under the Government Documents tab, because I want you to take a look at these and read these if you haven't. In fact, I'm shocked I haven't had these 2 documents up there before now. The first that I put up there, which I think is document number 30, is a copy of the book by Fritz Springmeier, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. Again, it's a free PDF. It's right there. You can download it straight from the website for free. It is one of those books that I think I read, I want to say back in like 2015, 2016, and if not slightly later than that. And it really is one of those books, again, that you cannot put down. Once you get into it, it's game on. And then you're learning about numerous different things. What's interesting is that the word education pops up in that document probably 26 to 29 times. And again, it's specifically tied into unions, and it's tied into the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, and then the book companies, and all of that. And of course, how the entire apparatus is designed to keep the truth from people for a variety of reasons. So there's that aspect. And again, I highly recommend you read that book, and it's over there on my website, again, under the Government Documents tab. Document number 31 is Project MKUltra. And this is a 8-page document of the declassified program itself, briefly defining it. And I want to define it here from this document, right here at the top, where it says the following, quote, Project MKUltra, or MKUltra without a dash, was the code name for the covert CIA mind control and chemical interrogation research program run by the Office of Scientific Intelligence. Now, before I keep reading this, just listen to the names that get brought up in this, and then think about the American education environment. I use that term education loosely. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's an indoctrination program, and we know that. I, of course, have said it's a torture program. I've used the word torture and brainwashing regarding the education apparatus, and it is. And again, I just kind of keep that at the forefront of your mind here as I read through this and as I read the names that get listed off here. It goes on and it says, quote, this official U.S. government program began in the early 1950s, continuing at least through the late 1960s, and it supposedly used United States citizens as unwitting test subjects. It says the published evidence indicates that Project MKUltra involved the surreptitious use of many types of drugs as well as other methods to manipulate individual mental states and to alter brain function. Again, take the education system, their policies, procedures, and what has become mandatory law in many states for children, and of course the people who are legally responsible for children throughout the course of a school day, as we think about it. Think of that first paragraph right there. That alone defines the fact that MKUltra is in play in American K-12 schools. And I'm not the first to talk about this. I am certain that the late, great William Cooper has brought this up on his show, The Hour of the Time, numerous times. I'm certain he has. In fact, I'll have to go back and look it up and listen to it a little more closely. But this is part of it. Now it continues and it says Project MKUltra was first brought to wide public attention in 1975 by the U.S. Congress through investigations by the Church Committee and by a presidential commission known as the Rockefeller Commission. Interesting name there. Investigative efforts were hampered by the fact that the CIA director, Richard Helms, ordered all MKUltra files destroyed in 1973. The Church Committee and Rockefeller Commission investigations relied on the sworn testimony of direct participants and on the relatively small number of documents that survived Helms's destruction order. It says, although the CIA insists that MKUltra type experiments have been abandoned, 14-year CIA veteran Victor Marchetti has stated in various interviews that the CIA routinely conducts disinformation campaigns and that the CIA mind control research continued. In a 1977 interview, Marchetti specifically called the CIA claim that MKUltra was abandoned a quote-unquote cover story. And then it wraps up here just on page 1, and it says, quote, the Senate floor in 1977, Senator Ted Kennedy said, quote, the deputy director of the CIA revealed that over 30 universities and institutions were involved in a, quote, extensive testing and experimentation program, which included covert drug tests on unwitting citizens at all social levels, high and low, Native Americans and foreign, unquote. Several of these tests involved the administration of LSD to, quote, unwitting subjects in social situations. At least one death, that of Dr. Frank Olson, resulted from these activities. The agency itself acknowledged that these tests made little scientific sense, and the agents doing the monitoring were not qualified observers. The final line here on the first page is it says, "To this day, most specific information regarding MK Ultra remains highly classified," unquote. Now again, if that doesn't define the American education system in a nutshell, I'm not sure what does. Even with the drug element aside, if you take the drug element out of it, okay, because again, the LSD testing on people and minors and getting them to believe particular things and a number of other things, that was all very serious and that happened. But there are way more subtle ways in which you can control one's mind. And as we all know, it's through repetition. And it's also through using quote unquote authority and an authority figure. Again, it goes back to Stanley Milgram's research on obedience to authority. Same exact thing. Approximately 63.5% of all individuals will be directed to kill someone because they provide a wrong answer in a test when told to do so by an authority figure. That's, again, how that test was set up. I've been over that test before. Anybody can go back and look that up. It's the same kind of thing. And then we know, of course, the power of suggestion and the power of peer pressure, which is exactly what Solomon Ash's entire research was all about as well. That if everybody going around a table provides an answer to a question, even though the answer is wrong, if the vast majority of people around the table provide said answer, even the person who knows what the right answer is will eventually cave to the rest of them. And we watch that play out in perfect form regarding the mask wearing and the shot taking within the American K-12 system. The social distancing, walk around with plastic dividers between everybody's desks and all that bullshit. That's why I started my book, my last book, The Unmasking of American Schools, with the Ash conformity experiment, because that proves it right there. So again, I fully understand again that the MK Ultra program was again to design Manchurian candidates, and it was designed to again elicit drugs into individuals and then manipulate individuals, both again using drugs and being exposed to drugs and then showing them imagery time and time again, which unfortunately has become our entire society. But even so, if you take the drug element out of it and you ultimately end up selling people that a injected drug, in this case, of course, with the COVID bioweapon, is a preventative medicine, the number of people who will fall for it is endless because the school environment promotes it, both as district policy and in the curriculum itself, by again trading it off as being fact when it isn't. And then they go home and they turn on their CIA brainwashing device, the tele-vision. They turn that on and they see the same imagery all over again. Not to mention the scare tactics that were all employed. This was the torture aspect of the MK Ultra program, using COVID as their overall story, quote unquote COVID, and then of course that infiltrating every line of work, not just American education. But they know the impressionable nature of children too, and the likelihood of children listening to their school teachers and then doing what their teachers say or what their teachers suggest, and even the building as a whole. That's a powerful force. I'm not saying everybody likes school and all the children went along with it, nor did all the employees. I mean, they clearly didn't. Lots of people quit, left, homeschooled their children, and again, we know plenty of children didn't go along with it either, hence all the suspensions that they received for not wanting to show up wearing a mask and getting kicked out and then coming back and getting kicked out. I mean, there were endless stories where that was the case. My point again is very simple, and that is that MK Ultra is in play, and MK Ultra is involved with American K-12 and university education because it says so in their own documentation. And then, of course, all we have to do is just look around. I mean, just look around at the state of affairs. Now, this leads me again back to another document that I have on my website under the Government Documents tab, which I've read from before, but it requires a very quick revisit. And it's the document that's titled Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, an Introductory Programming Model. This also is declassified from our own government. And there's a particular section of this, specifically on page 47, where the section is titled Diversion, the Primary Strategy. Again, they specifically reference numerous things and numerous tools and methods that they bring to bear specifically within the education system. So it says the following, quote, "Experience has proven that the simplest method of securing a silent weapon and gaining control of the public is to keep the public undisciplined and ignorant of basic systems principles, on the one hand, while keeping them confused, disorganized, and distracted with matters of no real importance on the other hand. This is achieved by," and here's what it says, number 1, disengaging their minds, sabotaging their mental activities by providing a low-quality program of public education in mathematics, logic, systems design, and economics, and by disengaging technical creativity, or discouraging, rather, technical creativity. Number 2, engaging their emotions, increasing their self-indulgence and their indulgence in emotional and physical activities by 2 methods. A, unrelenting emotional affrontations, if I'm saying that right, and attacks, mental and emotional rape, they call it, by way of a consistent barrage of sex, violence, and wars in the media, especially the TV and the newspapers. B, giving them what they desire, in excess, junk food for thought, as they have in quotes, and depriving them of what they really need. And then number 3, rewriting history and law, and subjecting the public to the deviant creation, thus being able to shift their thinking from personal needs to highly fabricated outside priorities. It then continues and it says, these preclude their interest in and discovery of the silent weapons of social automation technology. It says the general rule is that there is a profit in confusion, and more confusion, the more profit. Therefore, the best approach is to create problems and then offer the solutions. And it provides 4 regarding their diversion summary. Number 1, media. Keep the adult public attention diverted away from the real social issues and captivated by matters of no real importance. Number 2, schools. Keep the young public ignorant of real mathematics, real economics, real law, and real history. Keep in mind with that one, they're openly telling you, and with all 4 of these, which I'll mention, they're openly telling you that what they're showing you is fake. They're admitting it. And that they're telling you that they want to keep you away from what is actually real. You can't say it's not MK Ultra. You can't say that. It certainly is. The next one, which is the 3rd out of the 4th, is entertainment. Keep the public entertainment below a 6th grade level. Again, keep that in mind. The bread and circus, the movies, the commercials, the games, the gimmicks, all of it. Below a 6th grade level. They openly say this. And then the last one is work. Keep the public busy, 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 with no time to think, back on the farm with the other animals, unquote. Again, it not only defines our society, but it clearly defines, of course, the entire education apparatus. And then what you'll find in Bloodlines of the Illuminati is they again specifically talk about the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, getting control of the entire book publishing apparatus that infiltrates American education, and then, of course, that's the way that you control the story. That's the way that you rewrite history. That's the way that you rewrite all of history, not just history as a subject, but science, math, and 1,000 other things. Again, I can't help but think of Those poor bastards who are sitting inside of a trigonometry or calculus class, and they have no idea that trigonometry and calculus is fake, that it's complete fiction that was created by Sir Isaac Newton. It's not even real. It was made up by one random Freemason. That's it. And they're sitting in a class for an entire semester or multiple years learning something that they don't have to because it's complete fiction. And then, of course, as we know, as they state in the document, we have to take their time away from them. We have to steal the time from them, because that could be time where they could be learning about real things like real math, real economics, real law, and basically, again, in a larger summary, who the real enemy is. That's what they're stealing from people. Let me give you another example now as I get into more education examples here and away from those documents. Again, those documents in their entirety are on my website. You can go and check them out and download them for free. I highly recommend it. Talk about homeschooling curriculum. I mean, it's right there. But there's this. A listener of the show sent me this. Not surprising, and this is part of the MK Ultra normalization program of this insanity. You may be familiar with the foreign language learning app and company Babbel. Babbel. Interesting name. Either way, when you go to download their app, they have this ad essentially above the install button where it says in the upper left-hand corner that this particular offer ends on the 29th of March of this year. But it's 3 different fists up in the air, the old communist fists up in the air, and it says, enhance learning with a gender and identity course. Inspire inclusion. Again, this is a foreign language app. This is your average, although not average, foreign language application. That, of course, is clearly trying to normalize all of this Marxist ideology and satanic ideology as much as humanly possible, again, to gaslight people into believing that this is normal. And, of course, this is being used on illegals who are coming here because they have access to this app, which is free, with in-app purchases associated with it. But they're trying to get illegal aliens into believing that thinking and behaving this way about gender identity is somehow a real thing, when clearly those of us in our country fully understand that it isn't. It's a giant money laundering scheme, indoctrination program, and, more seriously, it's MK Ultra. It's torture. That you have to see this, you have to hear this, you have to experience this. This is a part of our school policy. This is a part of our school procedures. This is our curriculum. This is what we do. It's just one sledgehammer after another right into people's faces until it becomes, again, commonplace. That's torture. No drugs required for this one. The drug is the dopamine hit that an individual gets, again, from holding an electronic device, seeing the different colors, seeing the different imagery, and then having that beat into their brains as if, again, it's normal. Again, that's why we've seen all the DEI stuff. That's why you've seen all the SEL stuff. That's why you've seen all of these acronyms popping up out of nowhere on a constant basis. Well, what do you mean you're not a part of the PLCTR? Well, what do you mean you don't know what that acronym stands for? I just made that up, by the way. But the point is that that's part of it. It's flooding the people that work in these environments, these school-related environments, with all of this horse shit, and then they just blindly accept it without even thinking. Without even thinking. Again, you can take it back to anything. The mask wearing, the jab taking, protect yourself, distance, do this, do that. It's beyond absurd. Now, as you might expect, one of the side effects, and it's also not just a side effect, but it's an actual tactic and a normalized method of approach in order to brainwash people, is violence in school also. And that's why, again, Most of the violence that we see in school happens to be either black on black violence or it happens to be black on white violence. But very rarely are we witnessing in the media, certainly, white on white violence, even though it does happen in school environments, and it certainly does. But again, you see the constant division that's being taken place, and I should say, how that division and that MK Ultra manipulation really does work on the lowest common denominator. It works on the weak-minded, regardless of race. Whoever it is that is engaging in these confrontations, these are the individuals who aren't smart enough to not even be in the environment itself, because they don't know what the environment is doing to them. So this comes from, again, the Gateway Pundit. And again, here's part of the gaslighting too with the Gateway Pundit, because they themselves are part of this program, whether they know it or not. They could have said, black teenagers beat and stomp helpless white Illinois high school student into unconsciousness. Parents reveal the steps the school took to cover up the assault. But that's not what they titled it. They titled it Thugs. Thugs beat and stomp helpless Illinois high school student into unconsciousness. It's on film. It's on film. It's clearly black students stomping on the skull of a white student. There's no doubt about it. So here's what it says. Shocking footage has emerged showing the moment an innocent high school junior from Wheaton, Illinois, was beaten into unconsciousness by two fellow students. Even worse, credible information reveals infuriating steps that the school took to sweep the incident under the rug. Now, what was the infuriating step that they took? They didn't dial 911. But that's not uncommon either. Not dialing 911 is exactly what the schools want. This dates back to when I was a school teacher in the early 2000s. Same thing. Calling 911 is arguably one of the last things that they want any school employee to do, regardless of the situation. Pick up your classroom phone and call us in the main office. We'll handle it, they say. Don't call 911 because then the media gets involved and then more people ask questions and it shines a brighter light on what's going on here and then we have to answer all those questions. Again, image protection is their number one concern. It's always been the case, but they fall for it every single time because every single time that they're trying to cover up something, they don't understand that they're making way more problems for themselves than they would if they just called 911, had the appropriate people arrested, had medical attention show up, and actually just did the right thing. Because keep in mind, if this were general society out in public, that's what would happen. The cops would get involved, the people would be expelled, and then that would be the end of it. Of course, in general public, expulsion doesn't exist, but you get what I'm saying. They would be arrested, they would be charged with felonious assault and battery, and 1,000 other things. So this came from one of the Facebook posts from the Wheaton area parents, and it says, quote, "Hello, there are some videos circulating that has us and a few other families extremely worried. This video consists of two Wheaton, Warrenville South students beating up another student. They are kicking him and stomping on his head. The kid ended up having a seizure. The two students got very minimal punishment. They got suspended for 2 days instead of getting the cops involved and or expelling these students. Also, we were told that there was 5 fights that same day. The kids are a reflection of the school, and this has us extremely worried because our kids are going to grow and go to that school. What can be done here? Question mark. It says the public schools in our district have went downhill and it's very upsetting. Well, your grammar has gone downhill. That's number one. And if this is a parent, good Lord, someone please proofread what it is that they're actually writing. But again, That Facebook statement alone should tell people that the MK Ultra program is in full force, because here you have parents witnessing the abuse and stomping on the skull of a child by other children in a school environment, and then they openly state, our kids are going to be going there soon too, so what are we supposed to do? It doesn't get any more brainwashed than that. It doesn't get any more MK Ultra than that. You've just watched the beating of a minor by other minors, no accountability, a seizure take place, which means potentially the student now has epilepsy for the rest of their life, maybe. Might have to be on medication, maybe. And now what? Again, it said that they suffered from a concussion. Well, yeah. Long-term brain trauma, though, usually starts with a concussion and a seizure, and then, of course, it can carry on for a number of years, if not a lifetime. But don't worry, our young kids will go to school there someday, so I'm sure by the time we send them, everything will be fine. You can't say it's not MK Ultra. It certainly is. Only a lunatic at this point would send their children back to that same environment where this can occur. And let's face it can occur in every environment like this. Doesn't have to be that school in that state or in that town. It's everywhere. I bring these stories up all of the time. It's MK Ultra. Here's another one and another angle. This was from the Telegraph just the other day, March 5th. It's titled, Doctors Admit Link Between Transgender Hormone Therapy and Cancer in Leaked Emails. It says the WPATH files show that patients did not always understand the consequences of gender reassignment. What environments push and make excuses for those who want to cut their own genitals off and play pretend with their God-given gender? Schools. The MK Ultra program is so effective, it's got the people, the adults, working in the environments advocating for the destruction of not just themselves, but those that they're legally responsible for protecting, while away from the parents in loco parentis. Again, I'm going to keep beating this horse in this episode. You can't say it's not MK Ultra. And they're openly stating again in that article that that's exactly what the whole transgender movement does. Is it causes these individuals again to regret permanent damage that they do to themselves. It's not, I mean, there was another story too. I'll probably get to it here in a minute. It openly stated that, I think it was from, what's his name? Michael Schellenberger, one of the, the Twitter Files journalists guys. He came out with a story that openly stated again that scientists in the UK have come out and said that there's no, I think it was in the UK, that there's no medical benefit nor surgical benefit to mutilating one's body because of, again, transgenderism. Well, no kidding. No kidding. We didn't need some study conducted to figure that out. What do you mean there's no benefit to me cutting my genitals off? What do you mean? Well, thank God I had this media outlet and these couple of scientists finally say something, and I had a guy on Twitter tell me that, because if they didn't tell me, I wouldn't have known. It's MK Ultra. Here's another one. This was from Fox News this past week. Missouri bill would require educators to register as sex offenders if they encourage transgender students. First of all, to that I say, good. Second of all, I say to that, what in the hell is going on in the entire environment where a state lawmaking body has to actually create this and then normalize the actual making of this law? The very normalization of the law and the very drafting of the law being introduced here by Republican State Representative Jamie Gregg It says, again, it would also require the educators to register as sex offenders if they're found encouraging students to further embrace their preferred gender identity. This could effectively terminate educators' careers since sex offenders in Missouri are prohibited from being within 500 feet of a school or daycare. Well, first of all, again, no kidding. But on top of that, it's an open admission without putting too much fanfare on it. It's an open admission that what children are being subjected to in American K-12 schools by their MK Ultra traumatized educators regarding the subject of transgenderism and all of this sexual confusion, that is a sexual crime. So just because it's being drafted and being interpreted that way in one state doesn't mean it's unique to that one state, does it? This is across the board. This is with everybody. This is a lawmaking body, again, drafting a law that says if you're a person, an adult, teacher or not, and you're doing this to children, you're a sex offender. But it's being normalized as if that's not the case. And then, of course, what happens? A giant debate, and people go, I'm not a sex offender. I want what's best for this child, and blah, blah, blah. And then it becomes this giant normalization of division. That's MK Ultra also. And yes, you can include, of course, the hormone therapy and the normalization of the hormone therapy. You bet your ass that's MK Ultra too. Without a doubt. It's the normalization of the administration of that drug, which leads children and adults to do what? Believe that it's okay to lop off their own genitals and play pretend with their own gender by themselves, but then also push that false belief system on other people. That's brainwashing. That's MK Ultra. I have another one. Here's another one right here. This is from modernitynews.com. It is titled, Almost Half of UK University Scientists Refuse to Say That Sex is Binary. And then it says, the underscored title here is, they, quote, do not understand the biological concept of sex, unquote. So apparently you have allegedly half of UK university scientists know that it's just male and female, and you have another half, approximately 50%, say, no, it's not just male or female. This is the constant grinding away of the mind with MK Ultra that they are trying to get people to actually believe. If this percentage is to be believed, that it's found, actually it says that only 58% of scientists at British universities believe that sex is binary. The idea and the ultimate goal, of course, is to get 100% to believe that it is not binary, that it is fluid, that it is whatever people want it to be. They wake up one morning and they're a giraffe. They wake up another morning and they're a woman when they're in fact a biological male, and so on and so on and so on. The ultimate goal is 100%. You can't say it's not brainwashing. And you can't say it's not government-sanctioned, government-funded torture of everybody who plays along with this. And now, of course, these people, for a very long time, as we all know, have been walking around with great influence, that the very brainwashed themselves that have been the victim of MK Ultra being normalized across the board in combination with Operation Mockingbird, that they're walking around with massive amounts of influence. They run these institutions. And here's the last one. Although I'm sure I'll bring it up slightly in the jab talk, but here's the last one for education. Again, wrote an article about this in October of 2022. Here it is on Zero Hedge from this past Wednesday. Quote, flood of migrant children to put an estimated $2 billion strain on public school system. Says the following here. It says, last month, CBO Director Phil Swagel claimed that the influx of illegal immigrants into the United States will boost the 2023 to 2034 GDP by about $7 trillion. It says, yet while we wait for those unicorn farts to percolate, the Heritage Foundation estimates in a new report that the influx of migrants is costing American taxpayers billions of dollars, as most of the 470,000 unaccompanied migrant children who have entered the country since Joe Biden's 2021 inauguration have been enrolled in public schools. It says in fiscal year of 23 alone, the CBP encountered 145,474 accompanied and unaccompanied minors nationwide, which, based on the national average of $16,345 spent per student, would increase national education spending by more than $2 billion for 1 year, according to the Heritage Report's fact sheet. Parents should also have to worry, or should not have to worry, it said. Nonsense. It says the report also highlights the misuse of school property, classroom mismanagement, and limited English proficiency, which is holding other students back. No kidding. Everything is collapsing the American education system in our country as we know it. And you can only do that through the systematic brainwashing of everybody who is still involved in that system. And like any brainwashing apparatus, ladies and gentlemen, the only way that you get out of it and actually see what's taking place with a clear mind and a clear soul, and recognizing that we've all been the victims of it, is to walk away from it. Because the people who have walked away from the education system look at it now, and they never have regrets about leaving. None of them. Occasionally, you'll get a lunatic out there, which I've even reported on some of these people on the show. You'll get a lunatic out there who is older, retired, and goes, you know what? I just want to go back into the education system and I just want to help them. I just want to help these kids. I want to help our kids and our community's kids because I just miss the classroom and I miss those kids. And they actually volunteer their time while receiving a pension in retirement, and they actually go back into the environment to quote-unquote help. But are they really helping? Or are they simply perpetuating the same brainwashing that was perpetuated on them, that they fell victim to without their knowledge, to then go back into the environment and deliver the same torture that they were victimized with from the very beginning when they were a child? It's lifelong MK Ultra exposure, to the point where the victim, as a minor, now becomes the unwitting instructor of the brainwashing. And scene. And then we're done. That's happening on a day in and day out basis. So, thus endeth the lesson, and hopefully the crystal clear proof that MK Ultra is in play in American K-12 schools and university settings with and without drug use. Again, you've heard me mention how the hospital conglomerates are making their way into school buildings, that county health departments are directly related to school buildings, the administration of endless drugs, of course, as we know. Not to mention, I didn't bring this up in the last episode, but CVS and Walgreens are, of course, offering over-the-counter birth control for just about anybody who wants it, which means if it's offered there over-the-counter, American K-12 schools and health departments will have it too. Now, they always have to a great extent, but now that's being normalized, well, that normalization is MK Ultra. That's the torture. This is okay to have. This is okay to take. It's okay to be sexually reckless. It's okay to be promiscuous because we have an emergency backup plan right here that we'll give you for free. It can't get clearer. It's a multi-pronged torture program. Again, we're way past kidnapping a child, sitting him, tying him to a chair, having him watch Fantasia and cattle prodding them, and then getting them again to be brainwashed to the point where we snap our fingers or we show them a shiny coin, and then their eyes roll into the back of their head, and then they become somebody that has basically been designed to be manipulated or become some kind of a super soldier. We're way past that. We're way past that. That may have been the initial intent, but the long-term plan was to roll this out without firing a single shot in order to get everybody to just go along with it because it's being normalized. And they don't know that it's an actual CIA-designed mind control program on all of society, not just American K-12 schools. Okay. Deep breath. It's frightening, isn't it? I mean, it's frightening. And it should be. But people continuously send their children into these environments again, believing that government is the parent. Nope, it's not. Okay, jab-related stuff. Karen Kingston and Dr. Joseph Sansone have been talking about this and writing about this on their Substacks, and I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention because, again, I put this in the basket of time is the ultimate test, and time will tell. And if you roll this around in your head long enough, it can drive you crazy because it's going to be interesting to see how far this goes and what people are willing to actually admit. And is an entire state in the United States going to basically remove the COVID-19 bioweapon shots? Knowing all of the blowback that would come with it, and of course all of the head exploding that would take place, and the servings of humble pie, and the crow eating that would occur as a result of doing so. So time will tell, not to mention, of course, all of the fingers in the cookie jar of the pharmaceutical industry that exists with the people who run the state of Florida. So we'll see what happens here. But this is from josephsansone.substack.com, where on March 5th, he wrote, "Breaking, writ of mandamus filed in Florida Supreme Court seeks to compel Governor DeSantis and Attorney General Ashley Moody to ban the jab." This is case number SC 2024-0327. And it says that it was filed again in the Supreme Court of Florida. And then as a pro se litigant, I filed a writ of mandamus with the Supreme Court of Florida. This mandamus seeks to compel Governor Ron DeSantis and Attorney General Ashley Moody to prohibit the distribution of COVID-19 injections, aka COVID-19 nanoparticle injections, or mRNA nanoparticle injections in the state of Florida. It says approximately 10 Florida county Republicans parties have declared COVID-19 injections to be a biological and technological weapons, have called on the governor to halt these injections and for the attorney general to conduct a forensic analysis of their contents. The Florida Department of Health has also called for a halt to these injections. You would think that would be enough to ban them. But again, it's about money. It says the most important thing that can be done is to get exposure to this action. The governor can deploy his attorneys to fight against this action, or he can simply prohibit these weapons of mass destruction in the state of Florida, making this case moot. I sincerely hope he will comply. The more eyes on this, the more likely the governor and attorney general do the right thing. I want to give a shout out to Karen Kingston for her countless hours of research and writing most of this material that constitutes the statements of fact of this legal brief. I also want to thank the 3 anonymous attorneys and National ARM President David Mizwinkle that put eyes on this document before I submitted it. I'm taking this action because no one else has done so. We can't allow our people to be targeted like this. This must stop now. If you are a doctor, attorney, or a human rights organization, consider filing an amicus brief or a motion to intervene with the Florida Supreme Court. I am praying that the Supreme Court of Florida stops this horror show. And then, of course, they have a petition at the bottom of his Substack article here, and there you have it. Again, if you want more information on it, you can jump over to Dr. Joseph Sansone's Substack page and take a look. What this has motivated me to do one more time, okay, just to do this one more time, is I'm going to put together all of my documentation on these bioweapon shots and send it directly, if I have to, overnight to the Sheriff's Department for Richard Jones. Now, I've brought Richard Jones up before. He believes endless lies, and I don't expect him to do anything with this document, but I want him to be in possession of this actual document and documentation that shows that this is a biological weapon, that it's killing the people who take it, that it's harming permanently the people who take it, and that if he, as a sheriff, is the so-called, as he puts it, the last line of defense when it comes to Butler County citizens and American citizens, that your sheriff is the last line of defense. If he's the last line of defense, then it's time for him to put his money where his mouth is. And it's time for him to do the thing that we were discouraged from his own department for doing, which is getting him to stop this immediately. Any county's health department can squash this immediately. They can put out a memo to every hospital that says, no longer administer these shots. Here's the rub. And this is a big rub. And I hope that Karen Kingston has taken this into consideration. And Joseph Sansone, of course, didn't say it there, but it might be in his actual legal brief. I hope that they stated that the same COVID poison that's in the COVID shots is now ubiquitous among all shots. That news reports have already come out, which I've played here on the show and in the war videos, that it's in the upcoming flu shots. We can already say that it was in the past flu shots, hence the COVID outbreak of 2020. So we can make that assumption, and that assumption is valid. We can also assume it's in the RSV shots, which means why would it only be there? There's ample proof it's in dental anesthetic. This has been shown to be the case also. They have to know this. They have to be told this. They have to be sent this documentation, and then we need to receive a receipt, hopefully, of course, from the post office, that says that we have proof that you are in possession of this evidence and you are refusing to investigate, and then ultimately pull this off of the shelves immediately. In my opinion, that's one of the last things that we can do. I understand the take that Joseph Sansone is taking here. I'm all for it. I suggest people do this also, but before I start writing any kind of a legal brief, I'm going to go after the sheriff here one more time. I think that's the easier move and the faster move that can be made first. I wish it was more than just one person. I wish it was thousands of people. And that one day he walks into his office and sees boxes and boxes and boxes of giant legal envelopes filled with news headlines, proof, statistics, medical records, you name it. And says you have a responsibility if you're the so-called last line of defense. Again, the nerve of these people to even make such a statement that they are the last line of defense is embarrassing. Here's what I want to end with. In fact, this individual, again, I've referenced before, and I have some of her documentation on my website also, and it's bailiwicknews.substack.com. It has to do with Catherine Watt. And this is Catherine Watt's Substack page. Again, she's gone through a great deal of documentation. She provides PDFs for people to send to others. She provides endless PDFs for individuals to look at directly from our government that openly discuss these depopulation agendas, specifically as the DoD coins it, and as she certainly coins it, the Killbox program. And if that doesn't sound good, it's because it's not. I've been over it here on the show before, but either way, in one of her last Substack articles here on March 5th, It was titled 4 Questions and 4 Responses, also updated PDF compilations, rather. She, of course, has, like I said, a number of PDFs on her Substack page, and I highly recommend checking them out. I want to read off the first question that has been asked to her before, I'm sure on numerous occasions, and then the answer that she provides, because it's a nice summary, I think, to this particular episode. Because again, it shows the government control of everything here. So the question that was asked to her was, what's the most important things that people need to know right now? And here's what she said, quote, for more than 100 years, the U.S. government, through the military and specifically through the Public Health Services branch of the U.S. military, in collaboration with private pharmaceutical companies and the UN World Health Organization, has been intentionally and effectively poisoning the population of the U.S. and worldwide, using products known as vaccines and immunizations, toxic mixtures of active ingredients listed on labels, adjuvants listed on labels, and undisclosed ingredients, and thereby hidden from public understanding. The intentional poisoning program has been escalating decade by decade. It started smaller and less deadly than it is now. Due to changes in U.S. law, acts that are crimes in other legal contexts, such as poisoning, battery, torture, and homicide, if carried out by vaccines and many other drugs, devices, and biological products, are legal. Perpetrators cannot be held liable under civil tort law and cannot be prosecuted under criminal law. This intentional poisoning is much more visible to the public because of the COVID-19 events since 2020, so there are more possibilities for stopping the programs. It says one of the main methods to carry out the mass deception is false attribution of cause and effect. For Sage Hannah readers familiar with the day tapes, these are examples of ostensible reason versus real reason. Then she writes, effect. Observed decline in communicable disease, infectious disease burdens since approximately 1950s or earlier. Then she has 2 bullet points below that. False cause, presented by U.S. government, military, public health, pharmaceuticals, more available vaccine products, and rising vaccine uptake among population. Actual causes, cleaner water supplies, better air quality, better nutrition, better housing, better working conditions. Then she writes again, effect. Observed increase in chronic disease, such as obesity, diabetes, asthma, allergies, autism, autoimmune disorders, infertility, depression, anxiety, heart disease, and cancers since approximately 1950s. The false cause presented by U.S. government, military, public health, pharma, lifestyle choices, alcohol, smoking, lack of exercise, stress, poor diet, environmental pollutants in the air, water, soil, and inherited genetic traits, all of which probably contribute, she said. Actual primary cause, more available vaccine products and rising vaccine uptake among population, especially children, and especially since the 1970s. Then she writes, effect again. Observed positive results from diagnostic tests on dashboards, quote unquote, and mortality statistics listed COVID as cause of death since 2020. False cause, presented by governments and public health authorities, deadly global pandemic, quote unquote. Actual cause, rigged diagnostic tests, data sets, and hospital nursing home homicide protocols, incentivized by federal funding to hospitals and nursing homes. Then finally, she writes one more effect. Observed increase in illness, sudden deaths, turbo cancers among your friends and family since early 2021. False cause, presented by governments and public health authorities, COVID or long COVID is the false cause. Actual cause, COVID-19 vaccines and other vaccines, damage to organs and organ systems, especially damage to immune system, unquote. And then she answers again a few more questions. How did you know this? How did you find this out? What's the evidence? She goes through it. Where do people go from here for more info? She answers that also. And then what are you asking or recommending that people do? And she goes through that also. So again, I subscribe to bailiwicknews.substack.com. I highly recommend you do the same too. It's free by and large. Most of her articles are free, highly educational, very on point. And again, she's filling a gap that needs to be filled. And she's gone into government documentation again that proves this is intentional. And ladies and gentlemen, just to bring it around and summarize it, you need MK Ultra in order to carry it out. You need brainwashed people in endless positions of influence, both children in schools all the way up through actual government, and people who hold government positions and people who work in hospitals to be victims of this CIA brainwashing program that's designed to torture people and ultimately get those tortured individuals to torture their fellow citizen. And it's working. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.